throughout this war, as somebody who doesn't live in Israel, I've been, of course, following many local news sites and newspapers in Israel just to be on top of things. One of the most prominent, I think, digital only newspapers is, of course, the Times of Israel, which sometimes I found a bit objectionable the way they are deciding to report or the way they are deciding to comment on certain things. And today we'll talk about two articles, specifically op-eds by David Horowitz, the I think like the chief editor of the Times of Israel or the founder of Times of Israel. Later in the show, we'll also talk about something that might also come up from these articles, and it's this basically the idea of where should be the focus, because Israeli government is failing when it comes to waging this war, but also international pressure on Israel is honestly unforgivable and is definitely unprecedented. So where should the focus when it comes to criticism really be? Welcome to the reality show. Joining me today are two people from Israel, so it's great to have both of them to get their opinions. Joining me today are Iyar Reichel and Jonathan Daon. And let me jump to you, Iyar. Any opening thoughts on Times of Israel, and also sort of what do you follow when it comes to news in Israel?
Well, I just arrived at Israel yesterday night, so I don't have much of recent things in the news to address. But I think there is the biggest thing I see is the implications of the claim that Israel needs to be sort of a implement in case Israel would occupy Gaza, they would have to implement some sort of a mixed welfare state towards the Gazans, and this is a very interesting argument that has a lot of implications, and I would like to address it later on the show.
Jonathan, any opening thoughts from you about the Times of Israel, or sort of what news do you follow personally?
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. It's great to be here. The news in Israel, well, I would say more broadly, are unbelievably leftist, overwhelmingly leftist in terms of the legacy media, particularly Ynet, Channel 12. Those I read in Hebrew, so I think they are really the worst. The English ones tend to be a little bit better, but you also have ARCUK in English, so there's not a lot of difference. And Times of Israel, I don't read as much as the other ones, but from what I could tell from these op-eds, this guy writes like a proper hard leftist, a proper Israeli leftist, and they rule the country for decades. These types, and obviously they rule all the old media. This one is quite new, but generally I think it comes from that tradition, and Israelis don't believe this media, at least those who have better ideas about what Israel should do when it comes to its self-defense. Israelis who are more favorable to the idea of Jewish defense are following independent Telegram channels at best, and worst case will be something like Channel 14, which has a lot of issues on its own. But for myself, I consume a few Telegram channels, which I find to be far more reliable than these newspapers.
I'd like to add on Jonathan. The reason we see today also in like new media channels, they're still leaning to the left, is because the ruling intellectual elite is extremely lefty. And therefore, also when there are new projects and new reporters and new media institutes, they are also have a tendency to be left-leaning. And those who are right-leaning, A, are an exception, and B, they are affected by this intellectual left stronghold, and in fact, many times will accept their premises and promote self-sacrifice and tribalism. They would just, go to the other end of the spectrum.
So let's go into actually the article that originally really irked me to basically want to talk about this specific topic, and it's it's an op-ed by David Horowitz from July 23rd, 2025. It's called "How Israel Made Itself Responsible for Gaza and for All the Death, Hunger, and Destruction There." We won't read the whole thing, but I'll be bringing up a few what do you call them? Few sentences. So I'll be just reading, and if you guys want to comment, you can stop me, and I might stop at some point myself. Now starting, the Israel Defense Forces today says it controls some 75% of the Gaza Strip, meaning that by its own declaration, Israel is responsible for most of Gaza, even as it continues its 21-month-plus effort to destroy the much reduced but still deadly Hamas. Israel simply cannot have its soldiers believing themselves in genuine danger and lacking non-lethal means of protection, killing numerous Gaza civilians almost daily. It undermines the war effort. It is immoral and indefensible, yet that is what is continuing to happen. Now, this is specifically talking about the AIDS distribution, right? The article assumes that since Israel is occupying parts of Gaza, it is responsible for the aid distribution. Jonathan, any comments?
It's just nonsense. Like, where does he bring it from? Like, he says it's morally wrong. Okay, where's the proof? He thinks it's wrong. Okay, he has a column on a website, so he thinks it's wrong. What does it matter if he thinks it's wrong? It's not wrong. What is wrong is for there to be an entity that is, to put it mildly, antagonistic to the Jewish state that it is here, and this Jewish state has to defend itself. It has to do whatever is necessary to protect its citizens. It has failed to do that dramatically on October 7th, and is now trying to do to correct that, we can say. So he says it's wrong. Okay, that's his opinion. He is wrong. He's morally reprehensible for saying that. How about that? Maybe I should also write a column about it. There's no proof. There's no. It just borrows the party line from, take it, New York Times or whatever, BBC. They also say that. Okay, they say that. That's their problem.
Yeah, even here, where it talks about, quote, killing numerous Gaza civilians almost daily, it undermines the war effort. And my question would be, so what is the war effort if it somehow includes that no civilians die? What is the supposed goal?
And how does it undermine the war effort? How is killing, even if Israel indeed kills these civilians, which it's not substantiated, how is it undermining the war effort? And as you said, what is the war effort?
The intellectuals on the West imagine those situations as if there is a bunch of evil terrorists and they hold the entire Gaza population supposedly hostage. And all Israel got to do is go find those, 200 terrorists, kill them, and then all the Gazans will come out with flyers and say, "Thank you, Israel, you released us from these evil terrorists. Now we can start coexisting." I think even the West doesn't really buy this BS. I think this is like what they're explicitly saying under the surface to justify their will to aid the Palestinian movement to destroy Israel. But regardless whether this is true or not, this is at least like the presented premise. Now, this premise is insane, it is crazy, and it is detached from the facts of reality. And just observing Gazans and looking the amount of resistance there is to Hamas, all of the other factions, the Islamic Jihad, the communist Palestinians, the ISIS, the Al-Qaeda factions, they all resist Hamas. They do it explicitly out in the open. They can do it. There is, in fact, a freedom of opinion within Gaza. And there is a consensus. They all agree that they should rid the Middle East of Jews. yes, some want communist utopia, and some wanted to be ruled by Al-Qaeda, and some wanted to be ruled by ISIS, and some want Hamas, and some want the tribe of Nasser. But they all agree that the Jews has no right to live by essence, by their basically there are creatures of the devil of some sort, collectively and interchangeably, and they all must die according to them. And the people of Gaza, in fact, and in vast majority, hold this premise and act upon it. And in October 7, they cheered. And when hostages were paraded into Gaza, the crowd lynched them. And the only reason that it wasn't a lynch to death is because Hamas stopped them from lynching them to death, because they are, by those monsters, those hostages alive, are an asset to blackmail Israel. So of course they wouldn't, and well, they killed some. Never mind, I'm getting off topic here because it just infuriates me. My point is that this view as if you just have to kill a bunch of terrorists and the war will be over is completely ridiculous. And let me explain it on the positive term, like what is my claim, what actually happens. What actually happens is the vast majority of Gazans give moral sanction to the ideology of killing all the Jews or ridding the Middle East of the Jews. And as long as they do that, there is no peace. There will be no peace. It is impossible to have peace, because peace is secondary, and the primary is that the two entities would like to coexist with each other in peaceful way and via respecting rights and via freedom. As long as there is the side of the Palestinian that rejects all of this, rejects freedom, rejects peace, rejects the rights for Jews to exist, and by the way, also rejects the rights of their own people, there will be no peace. And as once the Palestinian movement started to use force, there is no more room for discourse. There is no more room to try to convince them to change their ways. They've already started using force. This is now our responsibility to self-defense, to use force. So, and who said how many Palestinians have to die? The Palestinians, because they have the choice what ideas to hold. I cannot use magic to change their ideas. And currently, my only tool to convince them, by quotes, since I'm defending myself, is the use of force. So I keep use force to defend myself until they change the goddamn mind, and it's up to them to decide when to change their mind. And until they wouldn't do it, as long as they keep holding the idea that resistance is working and we should just hold on, and then we'll get the power and credit from the self-sacrificing West to destroy all the Jews. As long as we give them this hope, they will keep standing, I guess. So as like we should say, okay, enough is enough. I'm not taking into account the lives of the people who want to destroy me and have acted upon me. And they have a responsibility, they have a moral responsibility to take down the regime from the within, from inside, to oppose Hamas, and not to oppose Hamas to crown the Islamic Jihad, but to oppose Hamas to say, okay, we want the end of the war. We are giving up on the idea to kill all the Jews. And then the war could stop. Until then, we need to do whatever we got to do and kill whomever we got to kill to defend themselves. And you cannot treat these people as innocents. They are partners in crime, and it is a crime that has been committed, and it has a moral responsibility. You don't want to be a partner in crime. You need to reject this criminal and not to aid him. And that's what the population of Hamas is doing. And I want to address another thing we talked a little bit about, which is like the article claimed that if we take over Gaza, according to morality and international law, we basically have to implement a welfare state in Gaza and have the Jewish population of Israel to self-sacrifice and fund the Gazans. Now, it's very interesting because, first of all, the premise here is that this is a proper state. A proper state is a welfare state, and Jews should be like self-sacrificing for other Jews in Israel. But we should not incorporate Palestinians to our collective. We should not incorporate Palestinians to this welfare state, because at least they have the understanding to know it's not viable and it will collapse. Like if we will accept the Palestinians as a welfare state, so we will go bankrupt, and then say, oh, we don't have the resources to feed the Palestinians and keep them as creatures that are not independent and doesn't take care of themselves. And this is very it's very perverted, it's very sick, but it's also very interesting. And it comes once again from the premise of naive democracy, which is the West holds the premise, the conviction that, let's say you took away land and you did it in a just war. Let's go past this step. You did it, you now hold this area. Now you have to incorporate a naive democracy. And a naive democracy is you let the people decide whatever government they want, whether it's a tyrannical regime or whatever. And it's like an inversion of standards, because the standard for a proper state is not that decisions are done collectively, that it will align with the nature of man, which means rights, liberties, which means the state is using the force objectively to protect people from force. But with today's intellectual state of the world, they think that if we implement democracy, we'll get a mixed economy. And I have explained why it's good, or that even if we reject the idea of naive democracy, we have to implement this mixed economy or this humanitarian aid kind of military supposed rule. But in fact, what we get by implementing naive democracy is a complete tyrannical regime when you do it to such culture. And it makes sense. This is like an aggressive culture. It attacked you. You take over the place just to give them democracy so they could collectively reach the conclusion that they should return to the same thing they were, which is a tyrannical regime that attacks itself and its neighbors. And then like the supposed pro-Israeli saying, oh, if we occupy them, we are morally obliged not to use naive democracy because we've seen they choose terror. So we would have to use the military to enforce a mixed economy welfare state and feed them. And this is just completely perverted morality and view of politics. They completely detached from reality. They live in La La Land because they accepted the morality of self-sacrifice. So I think, okay, how we should self-sacrifice when we finally manage to defend ourselves, if we get there. And this is why they have no motivation. They say, hey, why should we kill all our soldiers just for us to collapse because we cannot feed the Palestinians? That this is a complete inversion. We should not, first of all, we should not sacrifice our soldiers. We should win by laying a siege and bombing them and making them surrender as soon as possible without risking our soldiers. And after they do that, we need to implement a regime that is not about a welfare state and feeding people and self-sacrifice, but it's about keeping people free to sustain themselves. That's all.
Yeah, and something you mentioned about sort of the productivity inside of Gaza, because I remember, quickly or sort of sometime, no, I think maybe the day after October 7, I think Israel did institute a blockade on Gaza, and like the day of, you had the international community calling Israel an evil state for having that, right? And my sort of like question would be, so Gazan society is so unproductive that if you stop the international aid from going in, the society is pretty much collapsing. So Hamas started the war with not having even like weeks worth of basically supplies. Well, Hamas had, but not for its population, sort of like week-long supplies to basically be able to survive this war. Again, go back in history. Every single war, almost every single war, usually ends because one of the sides is about to starve to death and they've completely run out of resources to continue. Go to Germany, go to Japan, both world wars, they were on the brink of starvation because of the blockades and had to end it. And I think Russia at some point might start running out of supplies to consume and will be in a similar situation. And so just to continue, I can read a little bit more and then we can comment on it. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz are enthusiastic advocates of the US President Donald Trump's impractical and immoral February idea of relocating all Gazans to unknown foreign destinations. And Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich reiterated his insistence that Gaza will be annexed by Israel and will become an inseparable part of the state. Jonathan?
Well, first of all, he's right. If Gaza was an inseparable part of the state, we wouldn't have been here. And that's the way it should have been before they went on this whole adventure with the Oslo Accords and then the retreat from Gaza. So he's absolutely right that it's a solution. It would have been ensured that October 7th wouldn't have happened. But again, you see the line and the sort of vocabulary he uses. This guy is the editor of this newspaper, isn't he?
Yep.
Again, I want to stress this impractical and immoral February idea of relocating all Gazans to unknown foreign destinations. What does it sound like to the people who are anti-Israel? What does that mean? It means like genocide. It means ethical cleansing. It's all these terms that they like to use. He's accepting that premise without question, and he's going on online writing in English from under the banner of Israel to accuse the Jewish state of essentially want to do an ethnic cleansing in Gaza, doing a forced deportations of people who are so and remember how it begins there, the article as well. It should have been stressed more, I think. He starts with a story about a Gazan boy, 14 years old Gazan boy. There was some horrible photos of him dying in an Israeli bombing. This whole approach of describing this situation is as if this is some colonial project that is done in faraway land. And these monstrous Israelis are not only killing boys, 14-year-old boys, they also want to ethnically cleanse the whole region and send them off to some faraway, mysterious places. And they have this crazy guy who thinks it should be annexed by the Jewish state. It's completely disconnected from him, what's going on in Gaza. It doesn't have to do with the Jews, doesn't have to do with it. It's not that this is a war of existential survival for the Jews, but rather this is some kind of a project. We want to get some more territory so we can build more settlements there. That's the whole inverted approach. There's no causality. There's no why are we here? Why are we in Gaza? Why are we even talking about this? Why are there kids dying in Gaza? I'm not denying that there are. Why does it happen? It doesn't question that. And I'm not saying an op-ed has to answer all of these things, but the whole approach is inverted. There's no relations, and this is something that the left does all the time, but I think it's also worth stressing that this is and under the times of Israel, this is a Jew going to the whole world and blaming the Jews for doing horrific things. And this is not a new phenomenon, by the way. There's a lot of organizations, there's a long history in the Jewish story of Jews going and fighting against their own people for the goal of acceptance among the Gentiles. And we can go on to a lot of historical examples. But I think this is just one continuation of that tradition. But the reason he's able to go on that, and that's the deeper issue, is that Israel accepts this same premise. The Israeli state, the Jewish state, agrees with that they should feed the Gazans. You have evidence. They started this GHF. They are letting all these trucks and they're letting planes drop shipments of food over the skies. Who is allowing that? Is it the Times of Israel? Is it the UN? Is it the Al Jazeera? No, this is Netanyahu. This is Israel. So we can go on lengths, Dan, criticizing the hypocrisy and the immorality of these people. But we have to remember that at the end of the day, it is Israel that agrees with all of that and is actively allowing it to happen. So the deeper evil is that there is humanitarian aid. There shouldn't have been a humanitarian aid. There shouldn't have been any of that. So I think that's the deeper issue.
I'd like to add on Jonathan. regarding the story in the article in the beginning, the 14-year-old that was killed because of Israeli action. And I'd like to remind us all a forgotten, obvious thing. Well, it's not forgotten here in this channel, but it is completely denied in the Western world. And that is that Israel does not carry a moral responsibility to the welfare of those who want to kill it. You are a part of a nation that ideologically and politically dedicated itself to the destruction of Israel. This nation initiated force. You're going to suffer the consequences. Israel holds no moral responsibility for the deaths in Gaza since it's defending itself. The best thing Israel could do is to make the situation in Gaza so bad that the Palestinians would actually like to surrender. And when I say surrender, I don't only mean hand over their guns. I mean surrender ideologically. Give up the idea that they should kill all the Jews. And the way to make them remove this idea is making them understand that this is not possible and would only lead to death and destruction and starvation. By the fact that we are feeding them, we are giving them hope and motivation to say, yes, they completely, like the Israelis give us moral sanction. Of course we can destroy them. We keep on doing that. We keep on killing Israeli and then promote our suffering for Israel to give us whatever they want, whether it is from worldwide pressure or from Israel's own inverted morality that they have accepted.
Yeah, and something to always bring up when it comes to sort of the discussion of Israel is many people, especially on the left or the international community, try to put the blame on Israel. That the reason why there is conflict right now is because Israel is this evil state. But something that I think originally was brought up by Benny Morris, and I found it interesting, is the reason why we are still talking about Israel is because Israel wasn't like the other state. Ask yourself, what happened to the Christians in Turkey? What happened to the Jews in Turkey? Or Armenians when Turkey came into power? They were genocided or completely ethnically cleansed. If they didn't do that, we would still be talking about Turkey because it would be similar conflict next to Israel. But it's because Israel chose to not get rid of all the Arabs in the new Israeli state, but chose to instead occupy them and then eventually integrate them into society. That was the difference Israel did. It's Israel trying to be sort of more moral as it is according to sort of like international community. That's the reason why we're here. Again, no other nation did anything like that. Again, even from the other side, I think specifically David Horowitz talks about how impractical and immoral to relocate all Gazans. Well, what happened to Germans in Czechoslovakia and Poland after World War II? They were all kicked out because it was understood. Okay, you try to use the justification that because Germans are in Gdynia or Gdańsk, because Germans are in Sudets, because Germans are technically all in Austria, we can connect with them. They are basically our people. So yeah, they were all kicked out because of that. So again, none of this is a new thing. This idea,
you don't get
yeah.
German terrorists now going and murdering people in Poland for reclaiming Breslau. There, you don't get that, and it's quite surprising actually when you think about it, isn't it?
Well, because it was given to them straight, right? You lost the war. You're getting occupied. This is what happens when you lose the war. But with Palestinians, there is this understanding that they can go and fight Israel forever. They can lose again and again, and nothing will change. Basically, Israel will be the one having pressure on it, right? Like even right now, what is the current expectation when it comes to Gaza? It's that Israel will get out and will give it to the Palestinian Authority. Where else is this kind of expectation?
Only
Any
when it's
comments or
used as a
yeah.
tool against the Jews, that's when the expectation. When it's not against the Jews, nobody cares. That's I think the what sets it apart really.
Let's read a little bit more from the article. So continuing, a war that began because of the absolute imperative to destroy Hamas's military machine and get back the hostages has metastasized into an Israeli military takeover of most of Gaza, overseen by a government dependent on the support of would-be permanent occupiers of Gaza. Israel has proved unwilling and or unable to foster any kind of alternative to Hamas for the governance of Gaza, not via local clans, not via the Palestinian Authority, and not via any kind of regional or US directed
That's just a lie,
mechanism.
but that's just a lie because there's the Yasser Abu Shabab clan in Rafah that has done some good work actually on that front, from what I can tell. The Gazans who live under that clan are much better off than those under Hamas. So it's just it's very comfortable to not mention that. I also want to mention more broadly when he said earlier that it is immoral and impractical. First of all, is he an expert on logistics of such operations? What does he know about what it takes to move a lot of people? I don't understand how he can speak
No,
with.
he holds the premise that we need to fund them and feed them.
Yeah, exactly. But when he says it's impractical, he doesn't know if it's practical or not practical. He just throws it as like another layer in his cake that he's baking. Also, when he talks about the immorality, as you said, you are, he's not a philosopher either.
No, it's okay. You don't have to be a philosopher to talk about morality. You just need to present your case, which he doesn't do. He cashes in on the popular broken morality of the West, and that's what everyone's doing. Like the core of the issue, your criticism is right. The core of it is those, I don't know how to call this reporter, but those people, they basically cash in on the moral premises of self-sacrifice and collectivism and welfare state and all of those good things. And they just cash in on that. Just you take it as for granted. Well, of course you believe that we should feed those people because we took over the land, and you don't want that. You don't want to feed them. It will cost you. So it's a complete inversion. And I want to say another thing because regarding the quote you've read, there is an implicit claim there that basically those Israelis, they just want to be occupiers as a primary and out of context. All they care about is just occupying. Like what happened? Like what happened when we gave the people of the Palestinian movement sovereignty over themselves? When we said no more occupation, what happened? They used everything they can and had and got to destroy us. So there is a context here for the occupation, and that is that it is currently the only way for us to secure our security, to defend ourselves. And when we try to defend ourselves, so those anti-Semite Jewish articles come up and say, oh, those Jews, all they want to settle and occupy, and because they're so evil and hold this evil ideology. And like, did you not been here in the last 2 years? Did you not see what they are trying to do to us, what they managed to do to us? And that we need to use force to stop it. And that means being in the area and controlling it. There is no other way. If you do not control the area, they will use their sovereignty in the area to destroy you. So what do you want to do? How can you have this implicit criticism as if this will to occupy is some sort of evil primary? Like, this is so corrupted, and it just blatant lies.
Do you think by the way, do you think it has to do with the fact that they're not in control of the country, these leftists, so they might as well get rid of it? Because they didn't used to be like that, the Israeli left. Didn't used
I
to
think
be.
no. I think it's basically the Israeli left is evading the recognition of the nature of the Palestinian movement.
But your implicit premise is that they want to do good and they want like
no, but I'm gonna tell how I see this phenomenon, because it is an interesting phenomenon, and I think, well, look at the left until October 7th. Okay, so basically the premise was, okay, the Palestinians received moral sanction from the left outright. Like, the Palestinians are good people, according to the left. They just want to live in peace. They want to coexist. Hamas shooting us. He just wants to take down military targets, and it's okay for them. It's moral to fight the occupying forces and stuff like that. And of course, they were evading reality because they were evading the ideology of Palestinism, which is a movement to destroy Israel by means of cashing in on altruism, basically. And they evade it because they are altruist. And then when October 7th happened, reality struck them and they could no longer evade in this way. Their current rationalization did not work anymore because they've seen goddamn Palestinian children coming in on October 7th, given weapons by terrorists and shooting Jews. And they've seen terrorists raping innocent Israelis. And they've seen the mutilation and humiliation ceremonies and how they trophied the bodies of innocent Jews. So they could no longer lie themselves that is, they only, want to take down the military and everything. So they just move on to complete new tactic of rationalization, which is, okay, we find a different way to blame ourselves. Oh, it's Bibi who wants to prolong the war, and it's those Jewish settlers who want to settle everywhere. Oh, and this war is, it's impossible to win, because they just want to keep their old perverted morality and perverted premises. So they find another way to rationalize it. And that's why in the beginning there was shock. And in the beginning, even the left spoke with sense and said, we gotta take over, we gotta use force, we gotta do whatever necessary, no water until we get the hostages. And then it took them a few months to find new rationalization and stick to it and forget about what they said. Because they want to hold their inverted morality and they want to rationalize it and they want to evade. So one form of evasion didn't work, they go for another. And the more as long as it gets more and more extreme, they will be more and more self-destructive with their evasion. And this is what we see right now. We see people willing to completely throw the entire Israeli population under the wheels of the bus to secure their sick and perverted ideology. And everybody can see their bluff. And this is why the left is panicking. This is why the left is collapsing in effect in the public view. They can create those manipulative polls all day long, saying to Israelis, oh, if we get a deal that brings all the hostages back and end the war and vote for the deal, and everybody says yes. But when you show Israelis the price of what the left wants, that he wants Israel to surrender to Hamas, so everybody says, hell no. Like the left is collapsing.
Right.
And Israelis most Israelis are decent, honest people, and they see this bluff. The problem is that there is a vacuum. They don't know what is the right morality. They don't know where to go. Nobody is promoting the morality of rational egoism and its political implications. Nobody's doing it with pride. So they're just, have to choose different flavors of altruism and self-sacrifice and tribalism. So the people in Israel, they are lost, but they obviously know that what the left is going to is completely perverted and evil. They do understand that, at least. And yes, this is positive, but we need to go and now when there is this vacuum, this is our time to go and present the moral way, how to win, how to secure your existence, and how to do it in a way that is moral and practical.
Yeah, I mean, this sort of I've noticed this a lot when it comes to the way the left views the rise of the, I don't like to call it far right, let's call it something like populist right. Think of, I mean, when it comes to Israeli politics, think of people like Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. When it comes to other countries, think of AfD in Germany, Reform in the UK, even Trump in America, right? The way left oftentimes view this as a bunch of racists came from the forest and started voting for these parties, instead of viewing it as people have problem with a certain thing. In Israel, it's the way that it's the fact that the war is not fought properly, I think, is giving the main thing to the so-called far right. When it comes to European nations, it's oftentimes immigration or corruption. When it comes to Trump, it was also sort of like a disillusioned win with the sort of what the left is providing. Now, the right, the populist right, isn't actually offering good solution because they also don't really have a philosophy to support it. But there is something that people are responding to, and the way left always sort of like acts is they try to ignore that. They try to, no, this is just a bunch of racists, so we can ignore that. I've seen that also with, like, even in my own country, we had like an actual neo-Nazi party that was like the second in polls at some point. And I think when election happened, they were like third or fourth. And the argument was that you know it was just a bunch of racists. No, it's the country doesn't just suddenly turn like completely crazy or something. It's there is a problem and nobody is offering a solution. And I think that's why you, as you said, you see this like collapse of the left in the Israeli politics, because at least my understanding, at least somewhat of a sort of more recent past, is that the left was sort of at some points even sort of like anti-Zionist, and that is pretty much like an unspeakable thing right now to like call yourself an anti-Zionist. So yeah, it really I think shows something interesting. And yeah, as Yar said, now is sort of like the best time to offer solution, because as I think is rightfully to point out, AFD, Reform, Trump, they are not giving a good solution. If they come into power, you see how inept they are when it comes to actually dealing with the problems they are supposed to deal with.
Yeah, and I want to add something on that. The thing about racism, and I talked about it in previous shows, is I'm not saying there are no racists in the popular right wing. It's filled with racist people. Having said that, the left is holding an extremely racist, supposedly anti-racist idea, and I elaborated it on previous show. I'll just give the gist. The gist is that if there is some sort of an ideology that it is vastly related to certain race, you cannot condemn this ideology and you will be deemed racist, as if you have something against the race. And what is the implications? The implications that people within a race, the left think people within a race, they're interchangeable. They have to hold the same ideas. And therefore, if you fight those ideas, you basically have a blind hatred for the race, which is completely ridiculous. And the example I gave is, it was in the context of Palestinism, is that like people criticizing Israelis who oppose to Palestinism, and they criticize them by being racist against Arabs, is the same thing for saying that people that oppose Nazism are racist against Germans. So this is what the left is doing when it's framing everyone who opposes Islamism and Palestinism and other evils. And the left just deems them as racist. It's completely ridiculous. And you can see how crazy it is, as if you cannot, you basically, if a race by quantities adopts, like many members of the race adopt a certain Sikh ideology, it gets complete protection, at least from the left, because you cannot go against something that is adopted by a race that's racist, which is completely wrong. You need to evaluate and judge ideas by the relation to reality and to man's nature. And obviously, there is a complete contradiction when somebody adopts an idea that says, let's kill these kind of groups of people and enslave them and live in a tyrannical regime. This idea is worthy of criticism. And I don't care how many Muslims and how many Arabs hold this idea. This idea is wrong and evil and should be condemned. And then the left in the world, in Europe, in the United States, in Israel, is digging their head deep in the sand because they're so afraid of this fake racism they're holding, as if like, I want to be racist, and your whole definition of racism is completely perverted. So you are, in fact, by trying not to be racist, you're committing extremely racist acts. It's completely crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you can even watch how the term Islamophobia is used, right? It's if you are criticism of Islam, you're Islamophobic. And separately,
well, listen,
yeah.
But it makes sense because those people have been through Islamotrauma.
Yeah, and even separately, by like claiming you are Islamophobic, they're trying to put together that you just hate brown people or something. They're trying to like mesh these two things together, which again is not true. When we say somebody is anti-Semitic, we don't mean they criticize the Jewish religion. We criticize Jewish religion whenever we can, because it's also mystic as any other religion, and to that extent should be criticized. But again, trying to say that simply for having problems with Islam, you somehow have a now whole problem with the whole group, again, and based on innate characteristics, not based on the fact that they are choosing this culture, they are choosing this ideology. The fact that you have sort of even Muslim people in the West that do not criticize the sort of the let's when people try to say that it's not Islam, it's this militant Islam. Well, then the normal Muslim people should condemn this militant Islam. They should actively stand against it. They should be on the side of Israel in this case, standing against Hamas, not defend it and then try to say, well, no, it's not all Muslims, but it seems like all of them are at the very least okay with what's going on when it comes to sort of the militant parts of Islam. Something I had one more article, but something different I think might be interesting to bring up is this question I had for a longer time, and it sometimes happens on the show that while we are talking about this, some of the hosts will bring up criticism of Israel, which there definitely is, right? From the day one, Israel hasn't been properly fighting this war, and to some extent is sort of guilty for the problems that are happening on its own. And sort of my question for you guys would be is sort of like, where do you stand? What is the proper criticism when it comes to when it comes to either current government or Israel? Because the way I kind of feel about it, there is such a hatred of Israel for improper things. Like whenever there is a criticism of Israel, it's not on the right things. It's not like people are criticizing Israel for, maybe earlier you mentioned the welfare state, or the sort of current waging of war, of not actually going fully in, not actually doing what is enough. So on some level, it feels like the criticism of Israel from me seems unjust when there is so much hatred coming from the international community.
Yeah.
Jonathan, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, this reminds me of a story. I was in Vienna. I was in Vienna at an event in some kind of a libertarian group. Mostly very positive people, actually. Beautiful city, Vienna. I met this gentleman, this Austrian, properly Austrian gentleman, and I presented myself. I said I'm from Israel, very proudly, as I do when I'm abroad. I have no shame in that. And then he was like, "Oh, from Israel. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean you agree with everything your country does it?" And then I replied to him, "Oh, yes, absolutely. I think they are horribly weak and they should do a lot more." And then he was shocked by my response, and he never dared mention anything to me again after that. So I think that answered the question. The problem with Israel, with my country, with the Yar's country as well, our country, that it doesn't do well temporarily, that it doesn't do enough to protect ourselves, is that we don't feel safe enough because it has failed dramatically, as we all know, on October 7th and in many decades before that, to give the citizens what it exists for. We have to remember, Israel was established because the world wasn't safe for the Jews. We had the Holocaust. Jews in the Arab countries also suffered. That's what we founded Israel for, so that we are safe. And it has not guaranteed that. We have to grow up every generation with the knowledge that they have to join the military, and they have to fight, and they have to risk dying for the sake of defending us. If we always live on the sword. If Israel has done its job properly from the day of its foundation, it would have waged its wars in such a way that we would never have to worry about fighting another war, as much as the German kid or the Slovak kid is not concerned about having to go and join some war which I actually think Europe is probably heading in towards that direction.
Yes, it's no longer, it used to be like this 20 years ago, but no longer.
Yes, hopefully it will be like that. But that is what Israel is for, and that is what it has failed, and that is what we in this lovely channel advocate so powerfully, I think, for.
Well, I'd like to add on that, and I agree with what Jonathan said, and I'd like to add that when you look at the moral responsibility in this situation, first of all, say Israel is worthy of criticism, as Jonathan said. We should have gone way harder, and we should not adopt the wicked morality of the West today of self-sacrifice and taking care of your enemies. I just want to put it in context, and I want to say there is primary blame and secondary blame. And the primary blame is on Palestinism in this case. This sick and perverted ideology is the primary for everything that we have in there. And obviously, this is what deserves the most condemnation, and this is what should be fought. And what we are doing when we address Israel, we address the secondary blame. Like it's not the source of the problem, but we are not dealing with the problem properly. We didn't create this problem. We didn't install the hatred for the Jews and anti-Semitism and Palestinism, but we did not recognize it. We did not identify it as evil. And we therefore did not do the right thing, which is to destroy it. We need to destroy this ideology because it's an evil, and it's an evil that is aimed against us. And even the primary of Palestinism is cashing in on the perverted morality of the West. It's like the West completely hold the idea. It's not about destroying evil. It's about making sure that the residents of a tyrannical regime have a good life, and not removing the tyrannical regime. Like they don't see the connection between the suffering of the people and the existence of such tyrannical regime. And no, we won't remove this tyrannical regime because those people have a right to self-determine themselves. And they also have a right not to bear the consequences of determining themselves as evil. This is a complete contradiction. This is evil. This is self-sacrifice for evil. You let people decide they want to install a tyrannical regime over themselves and give moral support to such tyrannical regime. And you can see this especially in Islamism and Islamic tyrannical regimes, which get a popular support for the people. And then we say, oh, but when this tyrannical regime tried to destroy the West and we try to defend ourselves, we have to make sure those people who support this tyrannical regime are well fed. And compare it to World War II versus Vietnam, or versus Gaza, or versus Iraq. Like in World War II, when the Western world was cornered and had no choice, he says, let's hell broke loose for real, and we do whatever it takes to defeat the enemy. But when it is, when we went past World War II and the Western world says, okay, we are the stronger one now, we can allow ourselves to sacrifice ourselves for the enemies because they can't destroy us right now. So let's just make sure that their people are having fun while the dictator that they are giving moral sanction to is trying to kill us. And this is a complete perverted view, and it's in this perversion is very essential in the problems we're having. All of those evil regimes, the tyrannical regimes, and Hamas and Palestinism, they're cashing in on this sick morality. They're making profit out of it. They're enjoying it. They're getting more power and more authority the more they kill Jews. Because the more they do it, we have to defend ourselves, and then they can tell the world we're poor, give us more power and food and authority, and this cycle just keep moving on until all of the Jews will be dead.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to sort of the way international community, I mean, it truly is the lack of philosophy, right? It's this idea that somehow if bad things happen, it's just because bad guys took over. The people, Palestinians, are somehow they want freedom. We just have to let them have freedom. So if we just leave them alone, if we just get rid of Hamas, they will want to live like us, which again is not the case. I mean, what is that idiom like? You can bring a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. I mean, it's the exact same thing. If a human doesn't want to live, if they do not want to live by reason, if they do not want to produce and live long term, there is nothing you can do. There is no society you can set up for him that will make him flourish. The only thing you can do for him is to allow him to do to choose the destiny he wants. And if he chooses to live by force, well, you deal with him by force. There is nothing else you can give him. The only thing you can give him is sort of the consequences of his own action. But by not giving him that, by even Netanyahu saying, oh, we just want to free Palestinians, we just want to free Gaza from Hamas, you are not giving, you are breaking the causality link. You are telling them, yes, you can be violent and nothing will happen to you. It's an okay way to live. Jonathan, any
Yeah,
last thoughts and where can people find you?
the man whose finger has had to do with the removal of us from Gaza dares to say that. What an outrage! Like, he voted for the 2005 evacuation of Gaza. Why didn't he make sure back then that there's such thing? Now he wants to rid them of these evil Hamas people. What an outrage! Yeah, it's really Israel's responsibility at the end of the day to do that, to make sure that we live safely here. It is not on the Europeans, it is not on the media, it is not on the Times of Israel. It is on the hands of our own leadership, of our politicians, of our military. That is who has to do that. And insofar as they don't, then they are morally responsible for a lot of what's going on. It's true that the ER says, of course, it's Palestinianism, as you put it, but it's also our refusal to end Palestinianism, as we've had so many opportunities to do, and we don't finish. We need to finish. That is what we have to do to bring peace finally to the Middle East. And our dear viewers can find me on philosophyIneeded.com. I hope the link is in the description. And I publish essays on a weekly basis about Israel and about other things of importance.
Iyar, any last thoughts from you and where can people find you?
Yes, I'd like to ask Daniel to put me more with Jonathan. I love being on the show with Jonathan. I think it's really good and fun, and I like our dynamics. And I think it's also good for the viewers to have us like discuss and ask each other questions. It brings up very interesting things. I'm Iyar Reichel. I am a member, an associate of the Ayn Rand Center Israel. You can find out more about the Ayn Rand Center Israel in aynrand.org.il/about. And I'm also a leading member of the Victory Now movement, which, by the way, Jonathan is also a part of this movement, and we cooperate and publish his articles because they're very good. And this movement we're creating a book, and this book presents a plan for Israel's victory. And I think the more primary thing and the more important thing, it presents the moral basis for Israel's victory, which is very much needed in nowadays. And you can see it in almost every show regarding Israel, how much the moral grounding for Israel's victory is needed and missing. So please visit www.victory.now. You can read our articles, you can support us, you can join the waitlist for the book, which will be released in English and in Hebrew.
And this is it from the Ayn Rand Center UK for today, but not the stuff we help. Cutting Edge is coming back today again in half an hour, starting on its own channel, but we are helping produce that. So link to that is in the chat. Make sure to join us in half an hour. Thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching, and see you in half an hour, and also see you tomorrow on this channel with another episode of the Daily Objective and the Reality Show. Until then, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.